Hi there, so welcome back to my channel, Managing Marathons. This one's all about the Chicago Marathon, starting on the 13th of October this year, 2024, which is not long, it's less than 4 weeks in fact. It's a fantastic marathon. I would describe it as flat, friendly and festive. So it runs through neighborhoods as opposed to boroughs. The start line's insane. They start with the Blues Brothers, Sweet Home Chicago. Sorry, New York, it's not all blue eyes with New York, New York. It is the Blues Brothers, Sweet Home Chicago. It's a fantastic marathon. They're anticipating up to 50,000 runners. It's very flat, it's fast. Kelvin Kiptum got the world record last year, 2 hours and 35 seconds, which is insanely fast. So we'll be running through 29 very different neighborhoods, over 6 bridges, slippery when wet, and for over 42 kilometers. I can't wait. So let's get into it. So let's get into it indeed. So the Chicago Marathon, 13th of October this year, 2024. This is all about that marathon. I'm going to break this into chapters again, just make it easier for you to navigate the video. So we're looking at much like the Berlin Marathon indeed. So we're looking at travel, accommodation, the exhibition, the Expo, the shakeout run 5K, the start line, the race itself, the finish line, and beyond the finish. I'm quite a big fan of the Chicago Marathon. In the 4 marathon majors that I've done, it is my favorite. You get a lot of merchandise. You can see I've got the poster behind me and the little poster over here and a few other bits and pieces. But let's focus on the travel element because that's what this chapter is all about. The time difference is 6 hours, give or take, depending on when, winter or summer. 6 hour difference when you travel this. So you gain 6 hours when you land. Now, why is that important, or why do I bring it up at all? Well, if you are traveling because you've got limited time in terms of time off work, you might want to arrive on the morning of the first day of the exhibition, which is the Thursday. So for example, you take a midnight flight or a late flight, a red-eye flight early on Thursday morning, and then go straight from there to McCormick Place Exhibition Center from the airport, if that's something you wanted to do. If that's not as significant to you, then don't worry about it. But all I would say is the 6 hour difference may work to your advantage if you're limited in time as far as time off work is concerned. Of course, you're traveling by plane. A couple of things to note as far as the plane is concerned. One, if you're booking direct with an airline, and I do have travel tips on a few other of my videos, if you're booking direct with an airline, it's not always the cheapest or the best value for money. I use an app called Momondo. I'll flash it on the screen right now. One of my favorite apps. There are many others. It's kind of a screening app for all the prices from one destination to the next. It gives you the best possible price options depending on the sort of filtering criteria that you put in there. And as I say, there are others. I particularly like Momondo because it's quick, easy to use, and it's very clear in terms of the information you get. I bring that up because I did a direct price comparison with British Airways for the same dates, the same time, the same airport and terminals, and onto Momondo. And Momondo gave me at about a 30% discount. How they do that, I don't know. I don't care. The fact is it was cheaper. So look out for price comparison sites rather than booking direct with the airline. It does make a difference. The other thing I would say about traveling to the US, if you've done it before, you'll notice. If you haven't, then you will need an ESTA, E-S-T-A, and that stands for Electronic System Travel Authorization. Once you've applied for it, you have to go online and apply for it. You will need your passport, date of birth, address, all that kind of stuff. Once you've got it, I understand mine is lasting 2 years, I think. But it does take anywhere from 24 hours, which is super fast, up to about 2 weeks to get a response from them. The Chicago Marathon is about 3 weeks out from today. So if you haven't applied for your ESTA, do that straight away because you will need that to get into the country. And of course, that's pretty much it. So if the time difference works to your advantage, make the most of that. Remember to use a price comparison site like Momondo. It will give you a 6 hour difference to your credit when you land. That might make a difference in terms of your time off from work. And remember to get yourself an ESTA, which is useful. Now, just very basic travel tips, which I'm sure you know. I've got one of these neck things that goes around your neck. I like to try and relax on the plane and make the most of it. I also have earplugs and eye covers. to make sure that I can be as rested as possible, particularly if you're taking an overnight. You may as well sleep unless you like to watch movies. That's entirely up to you. So that's the travel element. I hope it's useful. Let's move on to accommodation. So the accommodation aspect of the marathon, particularly the Chicago Marathon, I would say one of the top tips is to try and stay as close as possible. This is a fantastic course because it's a looped course. You start and finish in the same place, which is fabulous. To make your life easier over 3, 4, 5 days a week that you're spending there, the Magnificent Mile is just north of Grant Park. It's a fabulous area to stay. Last year I stayed at the Warwick Allerton in Chicago. Very, very central, very close to the Nike shop, very close to all the big retail stores that you need for merchandise and that kind of stuff, metal engraving and so on and so forth. But if you can and you've got the time, then certainly booking.com and or Airbnb, you've heard me say this on other videos, are probably the two best options. Yes, of course, you can book direct with the hotels, but do try the price comparison sites. They'll often have deals that the hotels themselves can't match, if that's the right word to put it. So last time, as I said, I stayed at the Warwick Allerton, which is right on the Magnificent Mile, which is perfect access to Grant Park, where the marathon starts and finishes. This year, 2024, I'm staying just beyond the Magnificent Mile in a booking.com, which I found. I've got the whole apartment for about a half to 2/3 what I paid for the hotel last year, and it's still within reasonable walking distance. And as I said, the best thing I can suggest for accommodation is to try and get it within walking distance. If you can't because you've left it too late or the prices are prohibitive, because they use dynamic pricing, of course, like most cities, can get insanely expensive for Chicago in marathon week. So if you're thinking about doing this 2025 or 2026, one of the first things I do when I book a marathon is I look at the accommodation and book that as soon as possible, and then you've got a reasonable price compared to what would escalate to 2 or 3 months out from the marathon. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if it's slightly beyond walking distance, then you've got a couple of options. The CTA, that's the Chicago Transit Authority, unlike other YouTube videos I've seen, I found that really easy to navigate. It's very good value, and the stops aren't as frequent, for example, as the London Underground or other major cities that you can compare it to, but it does take you big distances and it does drop you off reasonably close to where you want to go. There is the internal loop, which is in a way a little bit like the Circle Line in London on the London Underground, and that takes you around the internal city centre, which is something else to bear in mind. But my top tip for getting around Chicago would be to use the electronic bikes. Those bicycles are fantastic. I know this is to do with accommodation, but of course, wherever you stay, you need to go back and forth to the McCormick Centre, which is the Expo, or the Startline, or get back to your hotel or room from the finish line. So the bikes are great. The app that you need to download before you go is called Divvy, D-I-V-V-Y. Flash it up on screen now. The one thing I learned from last time is it will not accept British direct debit cards, which is really frustrating. I met some Italian guys, some Dutch women. We were all struggling to try and register or pay for these bicycles. It just wouldn't accept any direct debit cards. So one chap tried with a credit card. It worked with a credit card. Those that didn't have a credit card, their final option was PayPal, and then it worked with PayPal. So they are a very good option though, because you can pick up and drop off wherever you are, which is fantastic. It's one of those ones that you just hook into the slot and then walk away. Absolutely fantastic. And then wherever you walk away to, you just scan the app, which has a QR code because you've already prepaid for the day, and then you can pull off another bicycle and then just go wherever you want to go. Those are fantastic. You get the normal pedal cycles and you get the electric ones, which are super fast, and it'll get you around very, very quickly. So accommodation, check out booking.com, check out Airbnb and all the other sort of price comparison sites. Google hotels, Google accommodation comes up, and that has some fantastic search functionality on it. That's another way to have a look at it. So let's move on to the exhibition, the Expo itself. First of all, first thing to note is that the exhibition is enormous. Wherever you go, whether you're dropped off by taxi or one of the shuttle buses or if you cycle there, the walkway in, it's at the McCormick Place, which is Lakeside Centre, Martin Luther King Drive or Road. So McCormick Place, it's an enormous building, and it really is about a kilometre, even a kilometre and a half to walk from the entrance hall up and down huge hallways, up and down some escalators until you get to the entrance hall. So it's massive. That's the first thing I would say is if you're there on the Saturday, watch the number of steps, because you could quite easily rack up 10, 15,000 steps on the Saturday, which is the day before the marathon, which is probably not advisable because you're on your feet all day. There's big distances to cover just at the exhibition itself. So that's the first thing of note. The second thing is when you get there, coming back out isn't so bad. A taxi rank full of taxis that are trying to dissipate the crowd and take them wherever they want to go. However, getting in, I noticed on the Uber app, for example, which is probably one of the easiest apps to use and the easiest way to get there, it was a long waiting time. There were hardly any Ubers available, and I suspect strongly that's because, there's up to 50,000 people trying to get to the same place at the same time. And again, like all of these other things, Uber is a business and they also have dynamic pricing, so the prices of an Uber can go right up through the roof. You can share the Uber, which will drop the price significantly, and most people staying somewhere centrally in Chicago can get out to McCormick Place sharing an Uber. And then of course there's the possibility of these electronic bikes that I talked to you about earlier, the Divvy bicycles. Well worth it. That's what I did in the end. It took me about 25 minutes from downtown, a really easy ride rather, and you can just slot it into one of those bicycle racks at the Expo Centre. Went off, got my bib, etc., came back, and off I went back out on the bicycle, dropped it off on the high street next to where I was on the Magnificent Mile. So the bicycle really is a good option. Uber is a good option. You can now pre-book Ubers. That might be worth trying, or just share a taxi from people that you're staying in the hotel with. So there's a couple of ways to get there, but it is quite a long way out, and it is an enormous building and you will walk at least 10, 12, maybe even 15,000 steps is my guess that day. Now, as you approach, the thing to remember about the McCormick Centre, it's open for 3 days, Thursday, Friday and Saturday. There is no bib pickup on the Sunday. If you arrive on the Thursday, it's 11 a.m. open time till 6 p.m, Friday 9 till 6 and Saturday 9 till 6. I arrived at 9 a.m. on Thursday, which was a bit silly. I hadn't checked the times, but it's only open at 11 on day one, which is Thursday. So I had to sit around for a couple of hours and just, wait till they opened. When you get there, of course, the main reason you're there is to pick up your packet pickup. And that is basically the bib that you need to pick up. The bib is really, really important. Of course, it has an electronic tag on the other side, which is your timing chip. You must, as with all these marathon majors, show up with some kind of photo ID, a driving license, your passport, something like that, and ensure that you've got the QR code that was emailed to you in advance. So really just those two things, some kind of formal ID and your QR code. What I like about when you go to Chicago Marathon, as you approach, you seem to be approached by a host or a hostess that has an iPad. You give them your name, and as you go to the booth, your bib is already ready because they've already alerted them through an app that you're on your way to pick up your bib. So there's very little waiting time, and actually it works really well, and it's very, very smooth. So the main thing is to get to McCormick Place Thursday to Friday, open 9 till 6 Friday and Saturday, 11 till 6 on the Thursday. When you get in, it is enormous. There's about 160 plus exhibitors. There's a main stage where they'll have presenters, keynote speakers, famous athletes from the past, giving tips and advice on what to do and expect. It's very, very friendly. You'll get loads of freebies and tasters and all kinds of things to try out. It's sponsored by Nike. I picked up this shirt last year. It's a fantastic shirt. It's all made by Nike, so the quality is fantastic. I think I also got this, I did get this, again made by Nike. It's a running jacket, but it's got some good reflective material on it. So if you're running, particularly in the UK in the winter, it's got Chicago down one arm, and I think it's got a little Chicago emblem on the front top left there. There's lots of stuff that you can pick up there. So when I was there, I also picked up some biofreeze I talked to you about in the introduction. In the US, it comes in a tub as opposed to a tube. And a couple of things, little 26.2 Chicago memorabilia there, which is magnetic. Stick that on the fridge. I got a glass, which is fantastic. It's really heavy and thick. It's a great glass to have your beer in, or whatever your choice of drink is. So there's an awful lot that you can get there. You know, if it's running related, and yet you're at the Chicago Marathon exhibition, it is enormous. I reckon it's probably 160 to 180 exhibitors there. There's food outlets, there's lots of toilets. You'll be well taken care of. All the memorabilia and all the sort of stuff that you can imagine that's running related will be there. So if you've forgotten anything, or if you need something, that's the place to get it. And you'll enjoy it, make friends with people, chat to them, go and see the main stage, go and have a look. There's a pace team that have paces from, I don't know, 3 hours right up to sort of 5-6 hours, give or take. The pace team's worth talking to, because they'll talk to you about the map of the route, and where to meet them at the start line, all that kind of stuff, which is wonderful to know. Enjoy it. It's a big occasion, it's a big exhibition, and there's an awful lot of people there who are in the same boat as you. Just get chatting to people, you'll enjoy it. All right, that's all about the exhibition. So let's move on to the actual start line. The start line is insane. It's huge. It's a world major, and you can imagine there's an awful lot going on. First thing to mention is that it's a 5:30 bag security check. So it starts at 5:30 in the morning, which means if you work it backwards and you need to have your breakfast at least 3 or 4 hours before you start running, you may have to be up at 4 a.m. to have your breakfast if you're starting at 7:30, which I was, and I did. So I was up at 3:30, had my porridge and a few other bits and pieces, a bagel and whatnot, at 4 in the morning. That gave me a good 3.5 hours before I had to actually run. So if you're in the red zone, there are 3 zones. I'll show you that on screen in a moment. 3 zones: red, blue, and orange. The red zone have to be there at 5:30 in the morning. You will have a security check. You don't have an option. There are no running vests allowed in the US in any of the races since the Boston bombing. I did see a couple while I was running, though, having said that, but you're not allowed any. You're also not allowed to take any water through. So if you've got any hydration powders or anything like that, I would just empty the bottle. So if you are taking a bottle, for example, or something to hydrate with in your running belts are allowed, then empty the sachet into the bottle and then fill the bottle while you're in Grant Park. There's lots of water stations, free water. We can just top up your water bottles or whatever kind of hydration you want. So 5:30 a.m. bag security. The first race, if you're in the red corral, starts in the red wave, starts at 7:30 a.m. The bag drop area is very close, right next to the fountain. You can't miss it. One tip I would definitely say is when I was there, it was pitch black. Chicago at 5:30 a.m. is still dark. So I would definitely take a torch. This is one I use for my ultra marathons. Definitely take it's rechargeable. Just have it and you can see a lot more. The last thing you want to do is trip over something at the start line. That's not a good way to start your marathon. So take a handheld torch or a cheap throwaway torch, which you can give to charity in one of the bags, or a head torch, whatever it might be. If you're taking a reasonable torch with you, you can always put it in the bag drop and then collect it later, so you don't have to lose it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is about the porta potties. There are hundreds. As far as the major is concerned, the marathon major is concerned, the Chicago Marathon seems to have hundreds of porta potties, or portaloos, whatever you want to call them. So you won't be queuing for very long. Having said that, I did see queues building up next to the corrals, but if you walk just a little bit further, 5 or 10 minutes, you'll find loads of empty ones. So do investigate further down, because you'll find lots of toilets are empty, which is fantastic. Now, back to the bib. If you look at the bib, your timing chip is on the back, which is really important. And it also comes with a few bits and pieces. First of all, the color. There is red, which means you're in wave 1. then you've got orange and blue, sorry, blue and then orange. And then you've also got a letter. For me, I was in wave 1, but in corral E. So I was the last corral, but I was in the first wave. And if you've got marathon brain and you're excited and stressed and you're a little bit anxious, just look down at your bib and you'll see where you should be. Right? So that's one of the tips I got. The other thing to notice is on the top right here, you can see these can be separated. And this one will go on your bag. I forgot to put it on my bag. I just folded that down. A lady said it wasn't a problem as long as I wrote it on the bag. This one is your gear check one, and this one is your token for a beer later on. That beer comes at the end of the race. It's Goose Island beer, which is made specifically for the Chicago Marathon, which I think is fantastic. I happen to keep the tin, which I brought back on the plane, and it's still in one piece and not squished. So that's Goose Island beer specifically for the marathon. The bib is a reasonable size. It's nowhere near as big as the Berlin one. So 4 safety pins would work perfectly well on there. I did find my Chicago bag a bit like the Berlin one. It's enormous. And you can see I put my number, I hand wrote my number on there in the end. So, and it will match the one that's on my bib. But the bag is enormous. So you can get lots of stuff in there. All your dry clothes, your spare shoes, nutrition, hydration, whatever it is that you want. Now, when you approach the start line in your own wave, in your own corral, I think you have to be in the corral 20 minutes earlier, and they do shut the barriers. So be in the corral early. If you've got warm clothing or your bin liners, which I've recommended before, take 2 bin liners. They trap the air in between and it keeps you nice and warm. Chicago can be very cold in October. Be aware of that and take suitable clothing. I always go to the charity shop before I leave. For £2-3 you can buy an oversized jumper or pullover, which you can wear for the beginning of the marathon in the corral, and then as you're about to start, just throw it away into one of the charity bins and you'll be absolutely fine, and then you'll warm up very quickly. The other reason for the bin liners is if it gets wet and it's raining, hopefully not, but if it does, you can sit on them and it keeps you dry, or you can put it on your head and it keeps you dry. So lots of reasons to have bin liners, as I've spoken about before. At the start, you'll get somebody local, a sort of celebrity, I guess, singing the national anthem, Stars and Stripes, for the US, the American national anthem, and then quickly followed by more music. The one that's played most along the beginning of the start line is the Blues Brothers, Sweet Home Chicago. No there. So, but it is a party atmosphere. There's a lot of festival atmosphere, I'd say. There's people laughing and joking and dancing, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. That's the start line. So the 4 main points I would say: get there early. If you're in the red wave, be at security bag check at 5:30 a.m. If you are later on, you might be able to get there a little bit later. If you are in one of the early waves, take a torch of some description. Remember, you cannot take water bottles or a hydration vest. Here's my hydration vest right here. So you can't take a hydration vest of any description. You can take a belt, which is fantastic. Let me just show you very quickly how this all looks. So here, for example, you've got the red zone. That's wave A, wave 1, then the blue wave, and then the orange wave. Notice in the red wave, you've got 5 corrals, blue wave, you've got 4 corrals, and orange wave, you've got 4 corrals. You go straight out of Columbus Drive, and you immediately go onto an underpass about half a kilometer. You will see guys going left and right, and then spending a number 1, spending a penny on the left and right. So it is what it is. You just have to ignore that. But a lot of the guys do that as they go through the underpass. You'll also notice there's lots and lots of porta potties all over the place. And as I said, Chicago is well for porta potties. You shouldn't be short of a porta potty. And as I said earlier, just behind the fountain is the bag drop area, it's number 15. It's well managed. There's lots of people ready to take your bag. That's this bag. All you need to make sure, as I said, is to make sure you've got your number on there so they can track it back to you when you come back after the race. When you finish the race, it's probably not going to be on the map here, but you come in this direction and then you finish. And then, as you see, you get the bag drop there. I'll talk more about the finish in a moment. But the other thing to notice is this is Michigan Avenue, which is a huge avenue, runs all the way along Grant Park. And just to make sure you get to the correct entrance, my entrance for the red way was here at Jackson Boulevard. Right here, there's a security check. It does take 20 minutes, half an hour to get through security. It's a bit like an airport security. All your bags will be checked. If you've got a backpack, they will check it. As I said, don't take any water in. You can always fill your empty water bottles once you've got past security. And that's really all there is to say. Study the map when you get it in your information pack. Well worth having a look at. The next one. So let's move on to the race itself. We've finished about the start line. The gun goes off. Bang, you're on your way. So the first thing I would say, as I would with any marathon, is start slow. You will have already worked out what your anticipated finish time is. If you work backwards, there's lots of online calculators to give you a pace per kilometer or pace per mile in terms of what you should be doing whilst you're running. So for example, if I want to get a sub 4, I need to average around about 5:30, 5:35 per kilometer, average over 42 kilometers. That will bring me in at about 3:55 or just below 4 hours. Whatever your pace is, work it out. You can get straps. People sometimes write it on their arm. You can get straps at the Expo to give you an indication of what your pace should be every time you come across a mile marker. On that point, now I've heard a lot about the watches not picking up a GPS signal. Now, I don't know about the Garmin's, but certainly with the Coros, I didn't have a problem last year at all. Touch wood. And fingers crossed, I didn't have a problem last year. I think this one tracks 2 or 3 satellites. It's the Coros 2. I know there's an upgrade that's been for a while now, Coros 3, but I'm very happy with the Coros 2. I think it tracks 2 or 3 satellites. The story is lots of people say that the tall buildings and the underpasses always block the signal. As I say, last year I did not have a problem with that. It was running and letting me know my speed and my average pace and what distance I covered and my heart rate and all the rest of it as normal. So if you know you've got a watch that doesn't do that, then that's something to be aware of. But as I say, you can get bands, you can get wristbands, you can get things that you can stick on your arm, which give you your mile markers according to the pace that you want to, or the time that you want to finish the marathon in. So just something to be aware of. The actual race, it's 42.2 kilometers, 26.2 miles, as you're well aware, but it's also interesting to know that there are 20 aid stations along the whole route. That's great. And it basically means you don't really have to carry anything. I mean, I would always advocate carrying your own gels or whatever nutrition you want to take with you for whatever reason. Maybe the aid stations run out, or maybe you have a particular choice or a particular brand that you want to use. I use Moreton gels. There won't be any Moreton gels on the Chicago Marathon, so that's what I'll be taking with me. It's my go-to gel, as it were. So whatever yours is, if you prefer to take your own, take your own. If you don't, there's Gatorade along the whole route, and there's obviously water, and there are lots of gel stations as well as things like bananas and so on and so forth en route. Plus, people sometimes give out all kinds of stuff, jelly babies, candy bars, you name it. That's up to you if you want to risk some kind of GI issue, something that you've never had before. As I say, I wouldn't recommend that, and I certainly wouldn't advocate taking something totally new on race day, because then you're just asking for problems. So that's the race. You know that you've got aid stations every roughly 2 kilometers, which is fantastic. There are 20 of them. In fact, let me just share that with you right now, and we can have a look at them a little bit more closely. If you look at what it says here, for example, 28 stations along the whole route. That's not insignificant. There's quite a lot there. And then if you look at this, what I want to point out, this is every aid station has a porta potty, or several, I would say probably a dozen or 2. Portable restrooms, so toilets. Each one of them has Gatorade endurance formula. I don't know whether it'll be the same this year, 2024, but last year was lemon and lime, not particularly palatable. That's my personal opinion of that, but there are other flavors. There may be a different one this year. And then, of course, water at each station. Also note that Gatorade carb energy gel stations are located at mile 10 and mile 14. So those are actual gels. You may just want to stick with that because there are also Gatorade stations to drink, which has its own amount of carbohydrates and calories. Aid stations 15 to 18 also offer Chiquita bananas. So lots to going on there, and so on and so forth. So it says here, familiarize yourself with locations offering what's offering each aid station. And that's good advice. Have a look at the map, which I've shown you before. Have a look at where each station is and plan your strategy accordingly. So that's with the aid stations. Now, I would also say, as far as the race is concerned, be aware that other runners may be faster or slower. This is general advice for a marathon, but also with all the very wide roads that you get in Chicago, it's unlikely that this is going to happen, except for the bridges. Now, the bridges are a little bit narrow, and as I mentioned in the introduction, when they're wet, they can be slippery. But there is a carpeted section, usually on the right-hand side, and most runners will try and aim for the carpet for many obvious reasons. It's more comfortable, it's less dangerous, and there's more grip, honestly. But if you still have a bunch of people, or the number of runners is bunched up, you may be forced onto the metal grate bit. And that's not the end of the world. It's very runnable. It's not like a cattle grid where you've got to watch your step. It's very runnable and you can quite easily run over them. All I would say that if it's wet or it's been raining or is raining, it can be quite slippery. So just a little bit of a caution there. The other thing, as I said, almost kilometer 30, I think, you get the BioFreeze station. I didn't use it last year. I wish I had because my legs were starting to cramp up. But the BioFreeze is fantastic. They've got a spray version of this and they'll spray it wherever you ask them to, and it does work. I have been using it since last year. You can get this in the UK. As far as I can see, the only place you can get it is Costco, which is an American firm, and you can get it and it's gel and you just rub it on hot days, or when you're on a particularly long run, just rub it on your muscles and it does make a difference. It's like the opposite of deep heat, but it has the same effect somehow. But also what I would say is when you get to the BioFreeze station, you can hear this, you can smell it for a few hundred meters before that. It's quite overpowering, but it's that kind of substance that just gets into your skin, helps you relax and loosen your muscles, and off you go again. So the race itself, make sure you're at the start line at the right time, get off to your race, start slow. It's good advice, and don't try anything new on race day, and particularly not on the race itself. You're more than likely to upset your stomach if you've tried something new that you've never tried before. Watch out for the bridges, particularly when they're a little bit tighter. They can be slippery in the wet. And generally speaking, keep an eye out on people in front of you and behind you. This is still 50,000 runners, and there will be a lot of runners at your pace, give or take. So watch you don't clip their heels or they're clipping your heels. What I would definitely say at the aid stations, there are 20 of them, remember. They are very long in Chicago, and they're both sides of the road, left and right, about 200 meters long. And you'll get Gatorade and you'll get water plus a bunch of other stuff. Don't stop, or try not to stop, at the very first 2 or 3 tables. There's just no need. You can go to mid table or right at the back, right to the end of the tables. There's plenty of people. There's staff. Last time I read something about it, it was almost like 200 staff. It's an insane amount of staff, and they're all handing out water. They're all handing out whatever you want to take from them. So the staff are fantastic. The volunteers are amazing. The cheer stations are amazing. You'll go through 29 different neighborhoods. The reason I bring that up is because it's culturally very diverse. You'll go through sort of a Mexican, Hispanic area. You'll go through an Italian area, Little Italy. You'll go through a Ukrainian area. You'll go through Chinatown. And each one of those crowds has its own little sort of ecosystem with their own music. The Chinatown one specifically has dragons and all kinds of paraphernalia going on. It's fantastic. It's exciting. There are DJs all the way along that route, for official DJs as well as pop-up DJs, just people singing in a band or putting a pop-up DJ stand. It's very exciting. The crowd will cover you, will sort of encourage you, but they'll also push you along. If your longest run before the marathon was, say, 20 miles, don't worry about the last 6. The crowd do push you. They do carry you along. It's fantastic. It's really exciting. It's a flat, fun, fast, and what I would say festive course. And the reason I said festive in the title is because of all those 29 very different neighborhoods. I haven't even gone through them all, but the 5 or 6 that I did mention, they're very diverse. And I've seen beer being given out. I've seen tequila being given out. I've seen tacos being given out, all kinds of stuff, as well as a whole host of sweets and goodies, sweet goodies. But again, up to you. If you want to try the stuff, go for it. But I wouldn't recommend it because you might get some GI issues. The race is fantastic. As you come along the final part, you may have heard this in different videos on blogs or vlogs or podcasts. The last bit, as you run along that, there's a right-hand turn as you head up this 200-meter hill. It's not a big hill, but it's where it comes. It's at mile 26 before you turn left, and that brings you to the finish. But don't worry about it. If you've done any kind of training on elevation, that hill won't even matter. But people talk about it because it is the only significant hill on an otherwise very, very flat course, the whole of Chicago. So that's all I can say about the race. It is fun. It's exciting. Just watch your pace. Remember, your race, your pace. Start slow. Don't go off and burn all your matches in the first couple of kilometers. Hold a few back. Know your average pace. Know what your pace per kilometer per mile is. Stick to it. If you see the blue line or the green line in the middle, that is the quickest way around the route. A lot of people will be following that. It tends to be quite busy on that blue line. It's where the marathon organizers track exactly 26.2 miles. You don't need to follow it. You'll probably go over the mileage anyway. So enjoy. The race is fantastic. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Take in that crowd. High five all the children. High five all the power boards that go like energy, tap here for more energy. It just makes you feel better, of course, but it also makes the crowd feel better. They've been out there for hours watching all the runners. Give them back some love and attention because they're there to support you. So why not reciprocate? All right, we'll move on to the finish. Thank you for that. I hope it was useful. So you've run the race, you've had a great time, you've either have or haven't got your predicted time, doesn't matter, you've got to the end and you're happy. You're now relieved that you've finished the Chicago Marathon 2024 and you just got this big, broad smile on your face. So a couple of things I'd mention about the end. The finish line is not a place to loiter. They will ask you to move on quite quickly if you just kind of loiter. I stood there and took a couple of pictures. They're very polite about it, but they do want you to move on, understandably. So you've got 50,000 runners coming in behind you. In my case, probably 10,000 runners coming behind me. But they do ask you to move on. Just take a couple of quick snacks, a couple of quick photos, ask people to do it for you, and then move on. As you move on, it's quite a long finish line, in the sense that there's lots of things going on there. So you'll go to get your medal, which looks like that last year. I can't remember what I got. So I got a 4:03, which I'm trying to beat this year. That's the ribbon that it comes on. It's quite a nice medal. It's quite heavy. You get your medal and then you'll get to like the goodie station where it basically just has refreshments of all kinds. So you'll get this stuff called muscle milk. I've got a bottle of that. It's only in the US. But it's really high protein chocolate milk. It's absolutely delicious. Definitely make sure you've got that. It's a big goodie bag actually with bananas, protein bars, muscle milk, beer. You can go and exchange your token. They gave it to me without exchanging my token. That's the token that will be on your bib. They'll rip that off for some reason. They didn't rip mine off. But anyway, I got the finisher beer, which is Goose Island beer. And it's just a really fun time. Lots of festivities going on, music going on, DJs. There's a lot of people coming through, taking pictures, very, very happy. Some are sort of collapsed on the floor, as I'm sure you've seen if you've been to other marathons. And then there's what they call a runners reunite. So that's where everybody meets friends and family. And it's worth knowing that there's a sort of A to Z alphabetical signs where you can meet loved ones, friends, partners. Just arrange with them where you're going to meet them. So let's say you want to meet them at letter Z, which might be a good one because it won't be as crowded as sort of RST, letter Z. Then you just go to the area that's marked letter Z at your predicted time, and then you'll meet whoever you're trying to meet. Lots of opportunities to take pictures. There's these banners along the finish line of the Chicago Marathon with the Chicago emblem, and you can just stand against them and take pictures, ask others to take pictures for you. They are also many professional photographers. So if you've bought the photo pack, you can just ask them to take a picture of you against the banners. And that's on both sides of the finish line, which goes on for a good half kilometer, I would say. So keep an eye out for those, because they are quite handy and they're quite nice. The banners are put up, they're sort of 7-8 foot tall, and you can stand in front of it with your medal, take a picture with your t-shirt on, the one that you would have got at the Expo. The t-shirts are quite nice, and then of course with your medal, which is what it's all about. So fantastic. When you finish, get to the reunite area, get to the letter where you meet your friends. There's also what they call a post-race party. And that post-race party is actually called Mile 27. So there isn't actually a Mile 27, but they call it 27th Mile Post-Race Party. And that's in a field called Butler Field, very close to the start line near Columbus Drive and Jackson Drive. Huge field. And again, this is why I call this marathon festive, because it is like a festive, it's almost like, like a festival where all the runners come in and they've got all their friends and family with them now because they finished. And of course, the number of people is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's a huge open park with lots of stalls where you can buy beer and burgers and pizza and all kinds of goodies after the marathon. And it's open till 4 p.m. It's actually open all day. So if you've got friends and family waiting for you to come back, there's something for them to keep them entertained while they wait for you, of course. That's the 27th mile post party, just about half a kilometer or a kilometer down from the finish line. So that's worth knowing. And then, of course, just checking my note here, there's post-race celebrations with Goose Island Beer, who sponsor it, of course. Main sponsors being, the Bank of America, but of course, Goose Island and Nike are also some of the sponsors there. But there are 4 bars, pubs, restaurants, whatever you want to call them. I'll flash it up on the screen. I don't think they'll change for this year, but they are there, and you will be allowed in with your medal. And there's one called Goose Island Tap Room. The other one's called Goose Island Brew House. You see the theme here, can't you? Another one called Lizzie's, McNeil's, and of course the Hard Rock Cafe. And you're able to go in there if you're a runner. And I'm not sure if they give you the first beer free, but anyway, there'll be lots of runners congregating there. Well worth it, because you've finished the marathon. It's time now just to sort of unload, relax, decompress, chill out over a beer, talk to other runners, how was it for them, and just have a chat. And that's where you can connect with people. You start to make lots and lots of friends, connect with them on Strava or on Facebook or whatever your choice is. But well worth it, because I'm seeing 1 or 2 other people that I met last year, which is fantastic, and it'll be the same for Berlin. So that's it. Have a fantastic marathon if you're going. If it's not this year and you're watching this for 2025 and 2026, many of the rules will still apply. Most of the stuff I've said will also still apply. Enjoy it. Start slow. Keep hydrated. Keep your nutrition up. Enjoy it. Have fun. And I look forward to any comments you might have. I'm always happy to respond to any comments or questions that you might have. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you on the course. Bye for now.